can make yourself comfortable on the floor. I've been playing with this lesson, and I was again just playing with it this morning, and it's so funny because it's different this morning than it was last night. So, you know how it is when I get super excited about a particular lesson. Oh no. That's to say that, as usual, regardless of what I'm yapping at you about, there's all kinds of different layers to what we're doing. So, remind yourself to keep your attention on your experience over my jabbering. So, as you're resting there, can I invite the imagery of your trunk as a central compartment? So, bring your attention to the way that you feel yourself from the back of your pelvis, along the contours of your back to the back of your shoulders. And could your neck and head feel like some kind of important attachment onto the central compartment of your trunk, your torso? And then also integral to the operations, can you feel the way that your legs are extensions out of your central compartment? So from the back of your pelvis emerges your right leg, contouring itself along the floor to your right heel. And from the back of the left side of your pelvis, sprouting out your left leg, feeling the contours of that on the floor leading down to your left heel. And then by some sweet gift, all of us here today also have sprouted arms from our trunks. So can you feel the way that your right arm is an extension out of your right shoulder, out of the compartment of your trunk, as is your left arm. Now, part of why I'm inviting this kind of imagery, which may or may not resonate with you, is that in my dancing with this lesson a bit this week, I've been thinking a lot about how much I, and ostensibly we, many of us, overuse our limbs and our general mobility, general mobilizing. And I was thinking about it a lot in swimming, because I've been swimming since we've been down on the sea. And of course, in swimming, there's this really spectacular interplay between movement, undulating or rotating of the spine, and some sort of agreement between the limbs. And of course, that organization is not different when you're walking around. You just have the added benefit of negotiating gravity in a different way. So as you're resting there, beginning to shift your attention, you could browse through your mind, think of the ways that you use yourself throughout your day in movement. And can you consider the way that your limbs might have an interplay with your trunk? And of course, in Feldenkrais, we look for an overall sense of lightness, an overall sense of reversibility. But we also look for a balance, an interplay. Sometimes I'll work with people and they will fundamentally seem as though they are walking with their arms. They're propelling themselves forward from their arms or from their neck, for example, right? Or they'll be so tight in the glutes, in the buttocks, or in the pelvic floor that they'll be really walking with their knees, So this lesson is an opportunity for you to very lightly and casually start to observe some of the connections that you have wired in there that you may or may not pay attention to. So without any particular kind of control or direction, shift your attention to your breathing and see if you can feel an influence on your trunk, on the way that your trunk's laying on the floor. And if we were to play with this idea that for today, your trunk is your central compartment or capsule, within that, where is your breathing the most prominent? Where's the biggest influence? What part of your trunk is being influenced the most by your breathing? Now, shift your attention to your abdomen. And a few times, exaggerate slightly your inhale into your abdomen. Take note of the feeling of your abdomen moving, but more particularly the direction that it feels like your abdomen is moving. Now, see what it's like if you change your perspective of yourself as though you were standing at your head looking down yourself, so that as you breathe into your abdomen, you breathe into the bottom of your abdomen, which is actually a part of you that wraps around to your back. So, in other words, could you start playing with the possibility of breathing into your abdomen so that it fills the bottom of your pelvis? Breathing down into the bottom of your pelvis, breathing into your pubic bone and into your tailbone simultaneously. And it's different than your abdomen going toward the ceiling. It might be a little bit elusive, so you just see what you can find there. The image that came up for me when I was playing with this was, in the 80s, they had those games that had the little mercury ball, and you'd either put it through the maze or more simply you just knock it from one side to the other. So I was sort of thinking of that, like my air being like a ball, a heavy ball that was dropping down to the base of my pelvis. Again, you know how it is with my analogies. You take them or leave them, right? Now, see if you can stay with that idea of bringing your air to drop down to the base of your pelvis. And can you sense that in the framework of your trunk, your whole trunk? And if your legs and your arms and your neck are little extensions from your trunk, is there any sort of micro response that you can feel through the other parts of yourself by just changing, let's say, the dimension of your breathing like this? Would you say that your spine gets longer or shorter when you drop your air down to the base of your pelvis? And if you do actually get some sense of change in your spine, then some of you might be able to reflect the change of your spine and the experience of your chest, which of course is, in one way, your chest is an extension of your spine, right? What is the influence of breathing down into the base of your pelvis on your chest? Okay, then just pause, rest your attention for a second. And then bring your attention to your chest. And first, just remind yourself, practice the feeling of breathing into your chest spontaneously. Don't direct it, just see what happens if you start to take your air in and expand your chest. Again, in the context of the capsule, what's the movement of the air in your chest? What direction does it go? And then could you play with the image of your air in your chest moving up? So there would be a widening around the top of your chest, underneath your armpits, and the very base of your neck, which of course would be the opposite of breathing down into the base of your pelvis. And again, maybe the image of the mercury ball is valuable or not, but see if you can start to play with the possibility of your air moving directly up in the direction of your head, as opposed to forward toward the ceiling or back toward the floor. And what's interesting in your sensation about directing your breathing like that? Could you go back and forth? Could you breathe one time up in the direction of your head with your inhale, let your exhale go out, and then with your next inhale, could you breathe down into your pelvic floor? Remember, there's no idea of mastery here. It's just playing with how you experience your breathing in the context of your trunk. And within that is the potential of discovering new things. But as you're playing, either just keep the air in your chest if that is challenging for you, you want to work on that, or you could play a little bit with going between chest and pelvic floor if that's accessible for you. But either way, can you stay with it a little bit longer and orient your attention toward your spine? So any kind of influence, any kind of changes that you feel along your spine, which may be something like getting taller, getting smaller. Maybe it feels different. All right. And then give your brain a little rest for a second. Of course, you can change your position if you need to roll on your side or do anything that you need to do to stay comfortable as we keep going deeper. Okay, and then come back again for a moment with your legs long and your arms by your sides, and bring your attention back to your self resting on the floor, the kind of contact that you make overall with the floor. And to weave in what we've been looking at over the last few weeks, but to not start practicing something we've done, to stay present in what you're feeling right now. See what happens if you start to get a little bit of traction in the back of your heels into the floor as you flex your feet. So just flex your two ankles a little bit by pressing your heels gently into the floor and then release. And for now, see if you can stay in the context of what we're doing now as opposed to where we've played with this previously. And for now, can you just flex your two ankles slowly? And can you watch the influence that that has on your spine? That's it. It's just your feet are neutral, and then you flex your two ankles and you listen for that transmission of force going up your legs to your spine. And then you release very slowly. Let's stay slow for now. And again, think about the idea of tall and small or long and short. And when you flex your ankles, do you get a sense of lengthening in your spine or shortening in your spine or something else? Can you continue doing the movement of flexing your ankles while starting to pay attention to the influence that has in your head? Does your head slide along the floor? Does it tilt along the floor? Is it pretty fixed? Is your neck pretty tight? Okay, and then bend your knees and stand your 2 feet and continue pressing your 2 heels into the floor, and also press your entire foot, both feet, into the floor just slightly and lightly, and then release. And notice the change that happens in your pelvis. Notice your breathing and see if you can not coordinate your breathing. So when you're pressing your feet and the back of your pelvis is dipping down toward the floor, can you feel that feeling without tightening your abdomen or changing your abdomen? And can you keep your air regular? Can you start to monitor when you might start tightening in your groin or in your belly, in your throat or your mouth? And what would it take to keep those parts of yourself as soft as possible, as receptive as possible? What does it take to keep your mind engaged in very, very simple relationship? I feel my feet, I feel my legs. Something happens in my trunk, my pelvis goes down toward the floor. And what about your neck? And then continue with the kind of rhythm that you have established of pressing your feet and releasing, but bring your attention back to breathing down to the bottom of you, down to the bottom of your pelvis. And you can choose the moment that you do that so that there's a widening, as though the whole width of your pelvis from the inside could widen and expand. Can you do that without tightening in your back or your chest, your shoulders? And then certainly pause if you need to, whenever you need to. And then when you feel that your attention is still crisp, can you continue with the pressing of your feet and the tilting of your pelvis, but bring your attention to this breathing in the top part of your chest, an expansion that goes around your top ribs, the top of your rib cage, base of your throat, and see if you can keep track of how that affects your spine and the tilting of your pelvis. Does your chest inflate? Does your chest get bigger or higher to expand that ring, or does your chest actually depress a little bit to expand that ring? What's happening there? Okay, and then give yourself another little break, lengthen yourself out. Feel the way that your back's making contact with the floor. Feel the way that your air moves comfortably. Widen your legs a little bit longer. A little bit farther apart. Yeah, your legs are still straight, but they're farther apart. There's just wider stance of your legs. Yeah. And then in this organization of your legs, could you do the same movement of your pelvis that you have been, so that you tilt it back, your low back goes a little bit more toward the floor, and then you return. And don't force it, right? You just see what you can do with your legs like this. And see for yourself, what does that evoke in your breathing? And if it feels like it's a strain, then you all know the drill. You do less and less and less. You do it in your imagination. There's no benefit from straining. If you feel pain or discomfort, the learning process is over. So you do whatever you got to do. Empower yourself to take care of what you need to be comfortable. Okay. And then leave that. Bend your knees, stand your feet again. And resume what you were doing before, which is pressing your 2 feet and letting the back of your pelvis go down toward the floor. And when you reduce the curve in your lumbar, what happens to the curve in your cervical spine, the curve of your neck spine? And if it's not happening already, could you exaggerate the curve in your neck spine when you flatten the curve in your low back spine? Can you feel the change of those 2 curves within the context of your upper back? This is a funny perception game, because your upper back is like a dome, in this case, a reverse dome. Your upper back is domed down into the floor. Most of us don't perceive that in ourselves, right? So as you're changing the shape of your low back and your neck, if your upper back is a bit of a bowl shape, you're essentially tipping the 2 ends of a bowl. Yeah. So as you continue very gently exploring that interchange of low back and neck, what happens when you bring your attention to the changes along your upper back? Now deliberately do the opposite thing. When you flatten your low back, flatten the space behind your neck. So bring your chin down toward your chest a little bit as you tilt your pelvis back by pushing into your feet. Okay, and then don't do anything on purpose with your neck, and then just continue pressing into your feet. Again, you could do this if you find this movement pleasurable, or if you can derive some kind of pleasure, you could do this movement all day long, right? And start to listen for the interplay or the interchange between the tilting of your sacrum down toward the floor, and we could say a lengthening of the top of your head. And if you can start to now keep the movement extremely light and gentle, but speed it up slightly, then you might start to feel something around the movement of your spine between your shoulder blades. Can you think of the perpendicular movement of your spine relative to your shoulders? Your shoulders are fixed more or less on the floor, and you're moving your spine up and down relative to your shoulders. Okay, then pause for a second. Try this. Hold your arms across your chest, hug your arms across your chest. Yeah, and actually hold the outer edges of your shoulder blades with your 2 hands. And then what happens now? Feel how your 2 shoulder blades are, and then if you continue the movement of your feet, how does your spine slide between your shoulder blades? Okay, let's take a rest. And just go back to the simplistic elements of somatics, which is, how are you? What are you feeling right now as you lay there? Okay, now bend your knees and stand your feet. Fingers are interlaced behind your head. Elbows are pointed to the ceiling so that you have a little basket for your skull. And check that you can kind of feel the shape or the contour of your skull in your hands. Make sure you're not overusing your hands or your wrists. Then before going anywhere with your head, just keep your arms in that organization and go back to the pressing and releasing of your feet and the tilting back of your pelvis, and that sense of your spine is like an arrow being shot in the direction of your head. Pew! And notice what happens or what you feel in your neck. And then stop with the pelvis for a second and lift your head away from the floor and keep it lifted. So find where you can do that a comfortable amount. Again, don't do it by using the front of yourself, right? Find the way that you can keep your head lifted by leaning on your back. Yeah. Now continue the pressing of your feet and the tilting of your pelvis. And see if you can tell when your head gets a little bit farther from the floor and a little bit closer to the floor. Your head stays lifted, but it'll move slightly. It might move slightly. Keep your feet standing and go both ways. So we keep playing with the tilting the pelvis back toward the floor, right? Now use your feet, but go the other way. You can keep your hands there kind of fixed behind your head and tilt your pelvis forward so your low back goes away from the floor slightly. Now here's something funny to think about. This is part of what's been completely changing the way that I'm able to perceive my spine. So it may or may not resonate with you. But that is, can you feel your back ribs, whether they're touching the floor or not? See if you can feel that general vicinity. And then is it possible that you can do a tilting of your pelvis that doesn't necessarily involve your back ribs? And you might be able to evoke that by, again, bringing your breathing down toward your pelvic floor, bringing the sort of the ball of air, if you will, down towards your pelvic floor as you're tilting your pelvis slightly forward. Keep in mind that your lowest lumbar vertebra is actually sandwiched in there between your hip bones in the back. So your low back, quote unquote, low back is likely much lower than you might think of it. Okay, then lift your head again. Keep your head lifted and go back and forth with the tilting of your pelvis. Try not to overuse your thighs. Try to use the feeling of the bones of your feet pushing into the floor, right? That's why you might adjust where your feet are relative to your knees and relative to your hips so that you can push your feet down into the floor. Okay, so see if now when you tilt your pelvis forward that your head lifts a little bit higher, which for some of you that's already happening. And then you keep your head lifted, but when you tilt your pelvis back, you lower your head a little bit lower. How does that check out in your sensing, your sense, really? Your idea of what makes sense. When your pelvis tilts forward, you lift your head a little bit more, and when your pelvis tilts back toward the floor, you lower your head slightly. What changes on the part of you that's between your shoulder blades? Okay, leave your head down, bring your arms down. You can keep your feet standing for a moment. Notice the way that you see your capsule, your trunk. And lengthen out your left leg. So your left leg's long, your right foot's standing. And then continue doing the pressing movement just of your right foot. So you've got a bit of an asymmetrical situation happening. So not only is your pelvis tilting back, but of course it's also tilting a bit to the left. And what happens to your spine? Can you still get a sense of the lengthening of your spine right up to your head? Your head's like an arrow being shot along the floor, even within this asymmetry. If you can do it with ease, see if you can speed it up, do it light and quick. Let your jiggly bits jiggle. Notice if you have a tendency to stop your jiggly bits from jiggling. What's going on with the shoulders there when you're oscillating? Is there any sense of the oscillating part of yourself separate from your shoulders? Play with that idea. Yeah. Push your foot down. Push, release, push, release, push, release, push, release. Yeah. Bring your foot as close to your bum as you need until you can get that. Some of you might do well to step your foot a little bit more out to the side to get a real clear push through. Okay, now join the oscillating from your right foot with the back of your left heel. Okay, then just pause for a second. turn your face to the left. So you're still your right foot standing, your left leg's long. Take a couple breaths there. And put your right hand behind your head, which is actually the left side of your head. And point your right elbow to the ceiling. So, as usual, take care of yourself. The instruction is going to be about lifting your head, but at any point, in fact, you know what? It also feels interesting with your head down. So let's just start. Keep your head down. Don't lift it yet. Continue the oscillating, but holding your head as you are. And again, you have the capsule of your trunk and the interplay of your two limbs, the sole of your right foot, the heel of your left foot, playing into your trunk. You have your trunk playing into your neck and your head. And you have your shoulders more or less fixed in a kind of funny way. So then pause, and when you're ready, again, just kind of keep moving at your own pacing. Continue like this, but do it with your head lifted from the floor. So your face still is facing the left, but you use your right hand to keep your head lifted and keep following the transmission of force through your right foot over to the left side of your pelvis. And then where does it go? How do you connect the sensation back up to the base of your neck spine, cervical spine, into your head? Can you do this without tightening your mouth? Remember, there's a potential for your arms to be free when you learn how to move from your center. Conversely, there's a potential for your chest to be free when you learn how to reduce the effort in your shoulders and your arms. Okay, keep your feet like this. Just rest your head for a second. Rest your arms. Turn your face to the right. Keep your legs like they are, but turn your face to the right. Put your left hand behind your head, behind the right. No, keep your legs like they were. Yeah. And then the same thing, lift your head with your left arm. Yeah, keep your elbow pointing to the ceiling. And then continue pressing through your right foot and your left heel, pushing through your left heel. And I would say you might get more information. I know that for a lot of you, the oscillating just feels nice, in which case go for it. Though I think if you're doing a particular investigation, I think you'll get more information if you do the movement slowly. Certainly I did. Information about sensing your spine between your shoulders. If you can start to sense your spine between your shoulders, can you sense your chest? What happens to your chest when you send this transmission of force through your feet? Then how about keep this configuration with your face and your arm, but change your legs. So your right leg's long, your left foot standing. Start slowly, press through your left foot. You can have your head down, you can try it with your head lifted. See which variation is more interesting. There's a huge potential to learn how to soften through the chest in this circumstance. It's hard to learn how to soften through the chest in most circumstances. And then you can keep your legs in this configuration, but switch your arms and your face again. What is the pathway? Left foot to the right side of your pelvis, but then what? Let it go. See what's changing about your experience of yourself on the floor. Go back to the movement of just flexing your two ankles with your legs straight. And listen to the transmission along your spine to your head. So the top of your head were growing longer. Okay, and then pause with that. And stand your 2 feet, bring your 2 arms up alongside your head. Your elbows can certainly be bent, but have the backs of your hands on the floor. Make sure you're not stretching. In fact, back off a little bit of what you think is not stretching. You might discover, oh, that's funny. I never think of stretching in my neck, but lo and behold, when I reach my arms like this, I am doing something funny with my neck. And then what's it like to press your 2 feet down again so that the back of your pelvis tilts back toward the floor? And could you imagine shooting your spine out into the distant horizon by lightly pressing into your feet, shooting your whole spine? Pew! And go back and forth so that you tilt your pelvis forward and feel what your spine is like, and tilt your pelvis back and feel what your spine is like. And keep finding a more gentle and soft possibility there. Less and less work in the front of your thighs, in your abdomen. More and more sense of light, gentle connection to the floor. Exactly. Some of you are already bringing your breathing back in. That's nice. And this extraordinary possibility of your trunk, the power center that it is, also being very delicate, light. And there's an interplay. Your femurs into your hip joints back down into your feet. Your hip joints up your spine, your neck and your skull. And a couple times as you're tilting your pelvis forward, shrink your chest. And as you tilt your pelvis back, expand your chest. And take a rest, see what's interesting about your contact with the floor. One last time. Bend your knees, stand your feet. Bring your 2 arms up like they just were alongside your head. I personally find this really fascinating. Now think about this, right? If you were to lift your head, we don't do it yet. Think of what you would do with your abdomen. Basic fitness 101, right? You lift your head and you tighten your abdomen, you pull your abdomen back. To sort of create that, tilt your pelvis back toward the floor and bring your chin down towards your chest. Just feel the feeling of that. You can even lift your head. Tilt your pelvis back toward the floor and lift your head. Just slightly. Don't clench your teeth. Do it with your hands behind your head. Why not? Let's make it really easy. So you tilt your pelvis back toward the floor. We're in 8th grade gym class, and you lift your head. Congratulations. Okay, good. Let that go. Bring your head down. Bring your arms back into that V. And then play with it and see what happens if you tilt your pelvis forward and you lift your head away from the floor. Make sure that you don't strain your teeth or your throat. You tilt your pelvis forward as you lift your head. And check and see, right? What do you do with your air? What helps you lift your head? Your inhale or your exhale? And then play with it. Play with the kind of strength that you have, right? So again, what's it like to lift your head as you pull your abdomen back, hold your abdomen in, versus letting your abdomen be soft and go forward, tilt your pelvis forward and lift your head. Is it easier to lift your head if you expand your chest or if you soften your chest? And then whenever you're done playing, let it go and have a rest on the floor. See if you didn't want anybody to know that you were doing it, could you do the most microscopic, gentle flexion of your ankles and tilting of your pelvis? Like literally the most gentle that you could. You're not even really sure if you're doing it or not. And if you are a swimmer, I really encourage you to play with concepts of this lesson next time you're swimming. If you're a person that walks around, I really encourage you to play with elements of this lesson when you're walking around. And for now, give your poor brain a break. Congratulate yourself for having the ability, even at the end of 2020, to still focus your attention for an hour on your sensation and your embodied experience. Just think of the kind of sensitivity that can give you in your day-to-day life the ability to focus your attention. And so you can go ahead and rest longer if you need, or if you're curious to try out this version of yourself. Whenever you're ready, you can roll over and sit up, stand for a bit, feel what standing's like, walk a bit, see what walking's like. I will leave you here to your own experience. See you soon. Have a good one.